William Mansfield Jr., better known as Billy, was born in 1956 in Grand Rapids, a city with almost 200,000 inhabitants located in the state of Michigan in the United States. William was the eldest in a family made up of 5 children. His father, whose name was also William, was a criminal with an extensive criminal record, with crimes ranging from theft to child grooming. He had served sentences in the state of Michigan and also in the state of Nevada. From what we know, the man had a very dubious character and often encouraged fights between his own children. Despite this unstable family environment, Billy said that as a young man he received a good education and even got along well with his family. However, at the age of 14, he decided to drop out of school and falsified his birth certificate so he could serve in the Army. While serving, he became dependent on alcohol, and shortly after, he also began experimenting with other intoxicants. As a result of his addiction, the young man was sent for treatment at a Veterans Administration hospital between 1978 and 1980. Before that, in 1975, he had married a woman named Phyllis Spielmaker, with whom he had 2 children. The couple divorced a few years later in 1979, and Billy's ex-wife decided to stay in Grand Rapids with the children, while he moved on with his life in other cities. Subsequently, Billy's ex-wife gave interviews in which she stated that he was an unacknowledged homosexual. According to her, on more than one occasion, he took men he met in gay bars and clubs to his house and had sex with them right in front of her. She also stated that he once confessed to her that he had taken a man's life. The woman said that Billy was a relaxed person, but when he drank, he became very violent. Billy, like his father, followed a criminal life and committed barbarities. I can say that he went even further than his father, being responsible for taking the lives of 5 women and girls between 1975 and 1980. He buried most of his victims at his home in Florida. Years later, he traveled with his brother to California, where he raped and took the life of another woman, who was his 5th victim. This was a brief summary of Billy's crimes, but now I'm going to tell you in more detail how it all happened. On New Year's Eve 1975, a 15-year-old Ohio girl named Elaine Louise Ziegler disappeared while camping. She was on vacation with her mother Betty and stepfather Blaine Chalker, and was last seen heading to the camp showers. The next day, upon realizing that Elaine had not yet returned, her mother and stepfather reported her missing to the authorities. From there, search parties organized by the local police department and volunteers fanned out to search the area. At first, the police assumed that the girl had fled of her own free will. Several people later claimed that they had seen a girl with the same features as Elaine riding a motorcycle, and when asked where she was going, the girl reportedly replied that she was returning to her home state of Ohio. On the other hand, sightings have also been reported of Elaine talking to a man in his early 20s near the shower area and later getting into the suspect's car, a light blue 1966 Ford Fairlane. After spending more than a week helping to search for Elaine, her mother and stepfather had to return home without hearing any news about the girl. The searches continued for some more time by the authorities, but unfortunately nothing was found. On January 31, 1977, Billy pleaded guilty to 1 count of attempting to force relations with a nanny. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison and 36 months of probation. Shortly after leaving jail, Billy assaulted 2 teenagers in a rural area of the city and was sent back to jail for violating his probation. There, he shared a cell with a man named Albert Lee III, 27, who confided in him that he had taken the life of an 11-year-old girl named Linda Vander Veen. Billy took advantage of this information and made a deal with the authorities in which he would testify against Albert Lee and have his sentence reduced. With that, Billy was released from prison a year later. As early as June 19, 1980, Billy forced an 18-year-old woman named Pamela Sherrill into his van. He then drove to a rented trailer, where he began attacking Pamela, cutting her lip and bruising her neck. Somehow, before the worst happened, Pamela managed to escape and reported the crime to the police, but by the time the officers went to the trailer to arrest Billy, he had already fled. On November 23rd, he was arrested in Santa Cruz, but paid bail and was released again. By this time, Billy had already accumulated a list of crimes, including assault, kidnapping, among others. On December 6, 1980, he met a 29-year-old woman named Renee Sailing in a bar. The two left together, and the next morning, the police found Renee's body in a drainage ditch. Renee was married and mother of 3 children. She had last been seen the day before by her husband. His clothes were torn, and his pants were pulled down to his ankles. The coroner determined that the cause of death was due to suffocation. Billy was arrested 4 days later along with his brother Gary, who was 23 at the time. At first, the two lied about their identities, but the police saw that their characteristics matched those of the wanted men. Thus, the 2 brothers were taken into custody on suspicion of having committed the crime. During interrogation, they pleaded not guilty to all charges, but due to witnesses placing them as the culprits of the crime, they remained in prison. On December 16th, the 2 brothers were tried in court on charges relating to Renee Sailing's crime. They were nicknamed the Bag Brothers by the media due to the fact that they wore paper bags over their heads to avoid being recognized by potential witnesses. The men pleaded not guilty to all charges, but were convicted by Judge John Marlowe. The charges against Gary, however, were dropped when he agreed to cooperate with authorities. During Billy's trial, his other crimes and suspicions against him in the crime against Elaine came to light. Because authorities suspected that Billy had taken the lives of several other women, his trial ended up being canceled and postponed while these other crimes were investigated. This is because the repercussions of the case led an anonymous whistleblower to call the authorities and ask them to search Billy's house in search of Sandra Graham, a 21-year-old woman who disappeared on April 17, 1980. In March 1981, police obtained a search warrant to excavate Billy's Spring Hill property based on information provided by the informant. Authorities searched and excavated the area until they located a skull and bones in a shallow grave covered with a blanket. The bones were sent for examination, and pathologist Dr. William Whitman concluded that they belonged to a woman less than 20 years of age. After analysis, it was discovered that the remains belonged to Elaine Louise Ziegler, the girl who disappeared at the camp. Authorities, suspecting there might be more bodies, continued excavations. Additional officers and metal detection experts also helped with the search. In the same grave where Elaine's body was found, the police also found some objects, such as jewelry. However, the girl's mother and stepfather said that those objects did not belong to her. Over the next few weeks, authorities continued to excavate Billy's property and found numerous chicken and cow bones. The police believe that Billy stole these animals from neighboring properties and, after doing a variety of evil things to them, buried them on his property. Following excavations on March 24, 1981, a small bag of human bones was found buried. Encouraged by this discovery, researchers continued digging and 3 more skeletons were discovered, all belonging to women. The first was named Jane Doe, as he was not identified. According to authorities, Jane Doe would be a girl under 13 years old. The second skeleton found was identified as Teresa Fillingham, a white woman who was approximately 25 years old. Before Teresa was identified, it was speculated that the second skeleton belonged to Melinda Harder. Melinda disappeared on July 27, 1980 in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. His remains were found in 1989, rolled up in a rug that was buried in Maximo Park, but identification only came in October 2008. Melinda was 20 years old at the time of the events. She was the mother of 3 children, and the person responsible for what happened to her was never caught. The third skeleton was identified as that of Sandra Jean Graham. Sandra was 21 years old at the time of the events. She was from the city of Tampa in Florida and worked at a school. She was last seen on April 27, 1980, in a bar parking lot accompanied by a man who was described as a biker. His car keys, his glasses, and his cigarettes were left behind at the bar. The skull of the first skeleton, named Jane Doe, was sent for facial reconstruction at Colorado State University. The objective was to create as realistic a face as possible of the victim, and then reveal it to the public and obtain any information regarding his identity. However, to this day, she has not been identified. On October 27, 1981, aided by a cellmate named 22-year-old Ben Berrigan, Billy escaped from prison while in the recreation yard. He climbed onto a roof where, along with Ben, he jumped outside the complex and ran. However, they were seen by a woman who was near the prison, and the orange prisoner's clothes caught her attention. The woman then quickly called the police. Within minutes, patrols and sniffer dogs were sent to the areas surrounding the prison. At around 11:45 at night, a resident of the region called the police and said that there were two men in prison clothes running near his house. The police quickly went to this resident's address, and when they got there, they found footprints that led to a nearby river. After 11 hours of searching, Billy Mansfield was located hiding in some bushes and still wearing his prison uniform. He was arrested and taken back to prison. About half an hour later, Ben Berrigan, Billy's escape partner, was also located and arrested after being spotted by a local resident. Just like Billy, Ben was also taken back to jail. While in prison awaiting his trial, Billy was indicted again, this time for taking the lives of 3 more women who were found buried on his property. Furthermore, he was also accused of trying to force relations with Pamela Sherrill, the woman who managed to escape from him and later reported him. Billy Mansfield's trial took place on February 8, 1982. His brother Gary and a woman known only as Cindy testified against him. The trial lasted about 2 weeks, and in it, Billy was answering for the crime against Renee Saling. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In relation to his other crimes that he committed in Florida, at first, as I already mentioned, he declared himself innocent, but later he pleaded guilty. With that, he received 4 life sentences, 1 for each victim he claimed in Florida. Subsequently, investigations concluded that all of the victims in Florida were raped by Billy, his brother Gary, and also by his father William. The investigations also concluded that it was Billy who took all of their lives alone. Although Gary and his father participated in the crime, they did not receive life in prison. Shortly afterwards, Billy and Gary's father passed away. On October 27, 2020, Gary Mansfield, Billy's brother, was arrested again, this time for possessing a large quantity of narcotics. In this arrest, which took place on the Mansfield family property in Florida, police searched the location and found more buried remains. To this day, it is not known who these remains belong to. In the year 2022, Billy Mansfield confessed to taking Carol Ann Barrett's life, an 18-year-old girl who disappeared on March 23, 1980. Carol was born in Zanesville, a city located in the state of Ohio. When she disappeared, she was spending her vacation in Daytona Beach, a city in Florida. The next day, Carol's body was found in a ditch along Interstate I-95 in Jacksonville. Despite this statement and Billy's confession, authorities were told they would not proceed with the case against him, as he is already serving a life sentence in California, as well as 4 concurrent life sentences in Florida. The Mansfield family's crimes don't end there. In July 2023, Terry Mansfield, another of Billy's brothers, was arrested on charges of forcing relations with a girl. After a complaint against him, police officers searched the man's home and found enough evidence to arrest him. He was 63 years old at the time. And this wasn't Terry's first crime. In 2005, he was arrested and accused of trying to take the life of a man named David Bell. Due to all these crimes involving the Mansfield family, their house became known as the House of Horrors. Authorities believe Billy has claimed many more victims. Every now and then, he confesses to another crime, but doesn't give enough details to prove whether what he says is real or not. Either way, he'll never get out of jail, and he won't be able to hurt anyone else out here. Well guys, that's it. Thanks for watching me till the end, and I'll see you in the next video.